I actually was so, I don't want to say traumatized, but freaked out by this book that I forgot I hadn't reviewed it. So I'll review it very quickly, but very, very quickly indeed. If you've read this book, you'll know why I was so freaked out. Partially freaked out, partially grossed out. Now, it's not a splatterpunk book, but it gave me the same icky kind of feeling. So there is... I just remembered a certain specific part of this book, and it's just made my insides crawl up and die. There is a doctor who is looking for a nanny sort of helper to take the burden off of his wife, to care for their son and look after the house. And it's a big old manor house in the countryside. And the job goes to a girl who has just been released from a convent. She wanted to stay there and earn her keep, so to speak. And I think really what happened was they'd had enough of her. So they told her to go out into the world and, make a life for herself. And she's hired by this doctor, unenthusiastically I should add, to go to the house and to help his wife. She turns up at this house, and the wife is apparently in the nursery. So the husband says, go and meet the wife, go meet the kid, Stephen, and then go to your room, sort yourself out, and get on with it, basically. She goes to the nursery. The mother is indeed in the nursery, leaning over the cot, cooing at the baby, and they introduce each other, and then she says, would you like to meet little Stephen? And she goes, yes, of course I would, yes. And she walks forward, and in the crib is a baby. But the baby is very, very much dead. And clearly has been for a considerable period of time. And yet the mother is still going on like Stephen is alive and making baby noises and giggling and all of the rest of it. That's disturbing enough. The husband is aware, and he tries to convince this girl that this is perfectly normal behaviour for somebody grieving, and when she's ready to lose her delusion, she will lose it. Until then, to carry on, as his wife does, pretending Stephen is still alive. Which means tending to him, bathing him, walking him in the village in the pushchair. Which, yeah. But the real thing that got to me about this book was the fact that there is I'm going to say 3/4 of the way through the book, maybe a bit further, there is a chapter. I should point out the whole narrative of the book is the girl is now 40 years older, and she is recounting her experiences in a journal so that somebody will have documentation of what happened. So it comes to it where there's a chapter where in her journal she basically writes the reader a 15-page trigger warning for what's about to be read in the next chapter. And you kind of get the vibe that if the character is giving you a trigger warning, shit's about to get real. And when I tell you that I heard the noises in my head as it was being described on the page, and my stomach churned, I'm probably downselling it. What this woman does in her delusion just had my inside shriveling up. And I'm not going to detail it to you, but it's one of the most disturbing things I've probably ever read. And every fiber of my being ran cold. It was, yeah, I mean, it wasn't good, let's put it that way. But the book itself was so creepy overall. I can't give it a low rating because it's very, it's very descriptive is what I was going to say. But I read it through to the end. I read it in 2.5 days, and it thoroughly disturbed me, which I suppose was its intention. So by that merit, I have to say it was a good book, but a highly disturbing book. And I would not read it again, but I'm kind of glad I read it because I'd seen a lot of people saying it left them internally scarred, and I can see why. So I gave it a 3.5 stars. Yeah, and I think I'll proceed with caution if I decide to read anything else that Amy Cross has written because, yeah,